There was a big Jewish community in Port Talbot, but by the time I was born, my family was the only Jewish family there. But I've got to say, you know, I never came up against any anti-Semitism, apart from the occasional jocular, "Your people killed our Lord."
Bennett Arron is a Jew from Port Talbot. His stand-up comedy explores what it's like growing up as a Jew in Wales. He's now on a journey to discover what's happened to the Jews who once lived in communities across Wales.
I'm hoping to learn a lot more about my grandparents and why they came to Port Talbot, and also what it was like living in the place I grew up when it had a large, thriving Jewish community. I think the whole thing is going to be an interesting experience. I think the whole thing's going to be fascinating, really, whatever I find out.
Originally, they were over 6,000, but now numbers are dwindling. It is a community in decline.
We're Welsh Jews. Yes, quite simply. We know what team to support on a Saturday.
He'll discover a sad period of anti-Semitism in South Wales.
I did warn you that the Chief Constable was very anti-Jewish in what he said.
Yeah, he didn't really hide that, did he?
Since the mid-1800s, Jews have played an important part in Welsh society and have been able to practice their faith in synagogues across Wales. But their future here is in doubt. This vandalised cemetery is the final resting place for generations of Welsh Jews, including those from Bennett's hometown of Port Talbot.
I haven't been here for... I don't remember the last time I came here. Too long ago.
His dad, Charles, is one of the remaining handful of people struggling to care for the site. It's a cemetery that dates back to the 1700s, and over the last 20 years, it has been repeatedly desecrated.
Unfortunately, you can see they've broke them all down. You can see all of these. But it's a shame the way everything's been damaged, you know. They throw things over. We had, at one time, there was glass on top of the walls. We had to take that down because it's not allowed. Very upsetting.
I always forget how huge a community it was, because growing up going to the synagogue in Swansea, I know that was always full. And I remember going there, and I remember that sometimes the children wouldn't get a seat and you had to stand or wait till somebody got up to go to the loo and then you grabbed their seat. And it was absolutely packed. You just forget how many people were here.
That's my dad. He was only 64 when he died.
I didn't realise how young he was.
When Bennett's grandfather came to Wales from Lithuania in 1913, he spoke hardly any English, but eventually became a well-respected pillar of the Port Talbot community.
This is where the glazing company was that my grandfather had, and then my dad after him. And I used to work here in the summer. I was rubbish. He used to have his vans parked outside here. It was a good business.
Nearby is his grandparents' home.
This is where they lived. And see that, my grandfather made that himself. Isn't that beautiful? So he was an incredible craftsman, brilliant at business. I wonder why, of all the places he could have gone, he chose to come to Port Talbot.
At Swansea Library, an expert on Jewish history, David Morris, has been doing some investigating. In the West Glamorgan archives, he's discovered records of nearly all of Bennett's ancestors, and even an account of the day his grandfather, Ben Arron, aged just 17, first arrived in Port Talbot.
It's a local history book, but this is the first reference that I could find to the Arron family in Port Talbot.
At the beginning of 1913, a timid young man arrived at Port Talbot General Railway Station, and feeling unkempt after his long journey from Lithuania, one of his first acts was to visit a barber shop where the threepence he paid for a hair trim represented a week's wages in Kovna, an agricultural region of Lithuania, and his birthplace, which he had now forsaken. I mean, it's an incredible story, really. And I don't know much about my grandfather's life. I mean, he died before I was born. I know I was named after him.
His grandfather Ben decided to come here because he'd heard that Port Talbot was a booming steel town with great opportunities.
There was like a small group of people from this small little town
Right.
had come to this small little town in South Wales. I don't think this was random. I think this was chain migration.
Well, they came because other members of the family were here,
Yeah.
so they came here.
David has discovered Bennett's grandfather's application for British citizenship. Originally, his surname was Aronovich, but he felt he had to anglicise it to help fit in.
And that's a signature there. We do B's in the same way. That's incredible that you've got this. I mean...
Bennett's grandmother, Sarah, was also from Lithuania. She was just a child, and with her father they had to flee the country. There'd been brutal attacks on Jews, and the Russian authorities were preventing Jews from leaving.
I mean, can you imagine how scary it must have been for my grandmother, 4 or 5 years of age, smuggled out of Lithuania, away from the family she was living with, put onto a ship. I mean, she must have been petrified. My family's history represents the story of other Jews who came over. Some came over because they were fleeing persecution, some came over just to find fortune, and they had skills that were required. Some were shopkeepers, glaziers, builders. I wonder if there are any comedians.
It's Bennett's experience of growing up as a Jew in Port Talbot, which is the raw material for his stand-up act.
My grandparents were very orthodox, very religious Jews. I don't know if you know much about religious Jews, but religious Jews are not allowed to do any work on a Saturday. You couldn't build anything, you couldn't make anything. They couldn't even light a fire, because to light a fire you had to strike a match. Striking a match created a spark. Creating something constituted work. So each family would ask someone to come and light the fire for them. And the person who lit my grandparents' fire was the local baker, who came along with his young son, and that young son was actually Anthony Hopkins. I often wondered if he ever struck the match to light the fire, burned his finger, and suddenly went...
By the mid-1920s, the population of Orthodox Jews in Port Talbot had grown to around 100. To accommodate the rise in numbers, they opened a larger synagogue. Bennett discovered this from his grandmother, but had no idea that this building was once it.
They'd have a big congregation here, and if you didn't come early, you wouldn't get a seat, which is unbelievable.
Today, there's neither a synagogue nor a rabbi here. It's now a spiritualist church.
Do you understand the name of Margaret? 5'4", 5'5", dark hair.
Yes, that's correct.
Lovely.
When they took over the building years ago, they felt a presence.
When the service used to go on, the medium that was up there taking the service always seen a rabbi coming up and down, and whatever medium come, he'd be disapproving, didn't believe in us. But one year he did come back and he gave us approval. That it's okay. And from then on, we've just thrived.
Bennett's looking for any reminder of its Jewish past.
If you go up in the attic, there's a window there. There was the original window, or went towards a synagogue.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Can you get up there?
Oh, no, you won't get. You've got to go through that little latch there.
This is really exciting. There's every chance that my grandfather is the one that made this window.
That goes right down at us. The actual window's in there, but no glass in it. In fact, I'm touching a bit of piece of glass that's stuck in the corner.
Really?
Yeah, I'm actually touching it, but yeah. No, it's all gone.
Nothing to see.
Nothing to... Only the top part, only the frame.
Oh, what a shame. Well, thank you for looking.
It's surprising just how little remains of the Jewish presence in Port Talbot, and how much has gone in such a short space of time. Even after World War II, there were still around 20 Jewish families here. But just 30 years later, there were insufficient numbers to keep the synagogue going. Bennett's family soon became the only Jewish family left, and eventually they had to move from their Port Talbot home and became part of the active Orthodox community in Swansea.